So, Robert, Johnson Matthey announced half-year results for 2015-16 this morning. In summary, how should we interpret these results, and are there any particular points to note?
Well, Sally, I think there are sort of 5 key points I'd like to make. The first one is some very good performance in ECT and really good progress in new business division. So I think very pleased with those two. Some challenging conditions exist in our process technologies and precious metal products division, caused by commodity prices and oil and gas and PGM, and also the relative slowdown in China. But we're taking action, we're reducing costs, just so we position ourselves for growth in the years ahead. In the working capital side, we've done really well. This inflow in the first half of the year is over £500 million. So really good cash performance. And linked to the disposal of a couple of businesses we did, we're doing a special dividend this first half year of 150 pence a share, and also raising the interim dividend by 5%, a bit more than 5%. That's all good news, that's all financial. On the negative side, it's really one of the most tragic things we've had in the company. We had a fatality, I'm very sad to say, in July in America in one of our plants. We've been doing a lot of work on health and safety, but clearly we've got more to do. And so there's a huge effort going on across the group to improve our health and safety performance, and a tragic event happened in July.
So you mentioned the challenging conditions in some markets and the action that is being taken to reduce costs. What should we read into the restructuring programme?
Well, I think it's one of these things about running a business is to get about getting the balance right. We have to deliver in the short run for our shareholders, but at the same time we've got to continue to invest in the long run. And what's happened in both the markets in process technologies and precious metal products is, whilst the long-term drivers still look reasonable or good in places, the short run is looking much worse than we expected it to a year or so ago. We all know what's happened to the oil price. We may not be, for some people, so familiar what's happened in PGM prices, platinum group metal prices, and they've come down a long way, and that obviously impacts profitability in the short run. So what we now need to do is take some action, right-size the business for the environment in which we face today, making sure though that whilst we cut to make sure that we deliver for the short term, we don't cut too far and therefore compromise the long-term growth of the business. And hopefully we've got that balance right. Difficult for the people involved, and I'm very sorry to say that. We're obviously going to try and do as much as we can to redeploy people within the company, but it's about setting ourselves up, right-sizing the business for the future, and enabling us to then grow on from there.
How do you see the longer-term outlook for diesel's share of European car production, given the continued commentary around NOx emissions?
Well, you're right, Sally. There's a lot of commentary around NOx emissions, not just in the US, but also here in Europe, and what's going on with particularly diesel cars. Well, the first thing to say is that Johnson Matthey is part of the solution. We have technology, we have products that help clean up emissions from a diesel as well as gasoline cars. And what's happening over the next few years is we're bringing in real-world driving testing conditions. And it's a test that will try to much more closely mimic the way you and I drive our car rather than the old test regime. And that will be good news for the environment because you'll lower NOx emissions, but also requires higher catalyst value, higher catalyst technology from companies like us, and we're well placed to benefit from that. So the real question then for us, for Johnson Matthey, is how many diesel cars are going to be sold versus gasoline cars? And the short answer is we don't know. We have always been expecting a gradual decline in diesel penetration, but on the other hand, diesel is still part of the solution for CO2 emissions. It is a better, more efficient burn, and therefore the CO2 emissions are better than a gasoline car or petrol car. So if we can get that emissions for NOx and particulate down to a level such that a diesel car and a petrol car are about the same, then diesel will win because of CO2. That's what we think we can help be part of the solution for. So hopefully it'll all end up being, in the long term, maybe good news for Johnson Matthey.
And finally, Robert, how do you see the short and long-term outlook for Johnson Matthey?
Well, the short-term outlook is, in some places, still challenging. I mean, we don't expect a recovery in the oil price anytime soon, or PGM prices anytime soon, and China still looks like it will be relatively slow for a period of time. But that will particularly impact our process technologies division. So the first half of the year we've obviously finished. The second half looks like it'll be in line with the first half results, which I think, given the macroeconomic environment, is still a pretty good result. Going forward, the cost actions that we're taking should enable us to return to some growth next year, And then it's all about the long-term drivers. We continue to invest in new technologies, new markets, new opportunities. We're still looking for acquisitions to grow the business. And we think that the long-term drivers of the company are still good and should position ourselves for longer-term growth into the future. And in, what is it now, just over 15 months' time, or just under 15 months' time, we're going to be 200 years old. We do think about the long term for Johnson Matthey, and that's what we're focusing on. And I think the long-term outlook still looks good.
Robert, thank you very much.